Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope that you are all staying safe and are finding things to keep yourself and your families busy during this very unusual time. I am Beth Reel. I am the acting assistant director at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. I'm also the transition coordinator and the youth advisory board coordinator. I feel like I've said the word unprecedented so many times over the past couple of weeks. This is nothing that anybody has seen before, and so we're doing our best to share information with you. The reason why we decided to change this webinar, it was originally supposed to be a transition to college webinar, and we decided to reschedule that for another time, and but still take advantage of the time slot with the supporting transition age students at home presentation webinar, because there have been a lot of questions at CPAC around secondary transition and students, older students at home. We find that there's no shortage of information online for younger students, but I haven't seen as much for older students, and so we wanted to help with sharing some resources and some ideas as we go along. So let's get started. So yesterday I spoke with Alicia Trachis, who is the secondary transition consultant at the State Department of Education Bureau of Special Education. And so we're working together on some guidance around secondary transition and what this means for our students. There's a lot of unknown for all students right now. There's a lot of unknown for everybody in a lot of different ways. And so the questions that we're getting are generally in these two or three categories. So one is what will happen to my child who's graduating or 21 and exiting special education? Will the school year be extended, or what's going to happen here? And the other big question that we're getting is what will happen to my child and the services that they receive, because obviously if a student has services that they're receiving out in the community through their IEP, that's not happening right now. And so those are questions that I have passed along to the Bureau of Special Ed. They have had those questions as well. And then the third one we're getting is what are the resources? What are things that we can do to support our kids when they're home? So if you have additional questions, something that I just didn't talk about around secondary transition, please let us know what those questions are, because this is how the state is going to address secondary transition in this time. So please put any questions in the Q&A or chat, or call CPAC or email CPAC in that contact information. You'll see that throughout the presentation. So some additional information as you go along. There's a lot of pressure on parents right now. Some of the things that I'm seeing online is that all of a sudden parents feel like they have to jump in and be their child's teacher for 8 hours a day, and they have to have a perfect schedule, and all kinds of things that parents have to do to support their kids. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we are less patient. We don't have the energy to really support our kids. So whatever that means for you, whatever take care of yourself means for you, it means different things to different people. I'm just gonna hop over here for a second because I see that one of my coworkers ended up on the call. And so I'm going to bring her on, hopefully. Yes. Hi, Laura. Okay, she's on mute, so hopefully she'll pop in as we go along. Definitely taking care of yourself. You don't have to be the perfect teacher. Many of us were not trained as teachers, and so we're just doing the best that we can. So many of us were just on a webinar. I'm going to talk about it a little bit in a minute, from the National Secondary Transition Technical Assistance Center. And one of the things that they suggested, and that one of the things I wanted to talk about today, was to use real life situations. So especially when you're talking about secondary transition, but really for all students, I talk a lot when I'm doing presentations to families about how we can support our kids to learn skills that will help them as they transition to adult life. And so things like learning how to do their own laundry, if that's appropriate, cooking, learning what the different vegetables are. One of my friends who has a daughter who is nonverbal, uses a wheelchair, and doesn't have the fine motor skills or much muscle control motor skills to do things like cutting and, like cutting vegetables or something like that. So for them, using real life situations is making sure that she's in the kitchen when they're cooking and they're talking, and they're talking about what the different vegetables are, things like that. So it doesn't have to be sitting down online, reading a book, doing schoolwork, things like that. That could be part of it if it's appropriate for kids, but that's not all of it. So one of the ways to look at areas that the school district has, and hopefully the families together with the school district have focused on as areas of needs, would be to look at the student's IEP if they have one. And I know some people are working with students who have 504 plans, but looking at what kinds of things did the schools identify that this student needs to work on. And so if you need help with that, because IEPs are not the easiest thing to navigate. So if you need help with that, then call CPAC, reach out to us. We can help you look at the IEP and figure out what are the areas that we need to focus on for your child. And then one of the things that we're starting to tell families is to document what you're doing. And so when all of this dies down and kids end up returning to school, it's really important to be able to express what the student did while they were home, what parents saw as their levels of functioning in different areas, what type of work, what things were you working on, behaviors that you saw, challenges that you faced. Kids work differently for their parents than they do in school. It's just a fact of life. It doesn't matter whether you have a kid with a disability or not. So you may see some different challenges than the teacher in the school saw because they don't really want to listen to mom or dad most of the time. But documenting that, and then just generally what you see happening from your perspective. So let's say, for example, you were working with your child on creating a meal for the family, cooking a meal for the family, and you noticed that they were having difficulty with fine motor, cutting or picking grapes off a stem or something like that. document those things and make sure that you have a record. And it doesn't have to be formal. It could just be a notebook, or you could put it in notes on your phone, just so when it's time for kids to go back, hopefully sooner than later, we're all crossing our fingers on that. Hopefully we will, you know, have some information for the school to say, okay, these are the things that we were working on. Here is how we continued the work that was going on in school. So just document, document, document. And I see that my other coworker is on, so I'm just gonna bring her in as well. Okay. Okay, so we have, okay. So the question is, will the PowerPoint be available to us? Yes, I will make it available. We have a section I'm going to talk about in a minute, an online learning section on the CPAC website, and I will make it available on that online learning section. And if I have your email address, if you signed up through Eventbrite, then I will send it out to everybody as well, along with the link of the recording. So we're not advancing, we are advancing now. So some resources in Connecticut that we have that I'm just going to go through briefly. Things that families can look at. So these aren't necessarily things that the first two, they're not necessarily things that you're going to do with your kids. Perhaps review them with your kids if it's appropriate for your particular student. So the Transition Bill of Rights is for families and students receiving special education, and it talks about the rights of students and families when it comes to secondary transition and transition services. So I'm hopefully going, let's see if I can click over to show this document to you. Okay. So here's the Transition Bill of Rights. It is available on the CPAC website. And as I said, under that online learning section, I will post this video, I'll post the PowerPoint, and I will post links to all of these resources. But if you go to the Transition to Adult Life section of the CPAC website, you will find this, and you can look at it or print a copy yourself. And so you can just take a look and see what the state says about secondary transition services when students are in school. They reference the Connecticut Core Transition Skills, which is something that we're going to look at in a minute. Talk about adult services, age of majority, and then all different guidance from the state. So this is something you could take a look at if you have time. Your son or daughter could take a look at it if it's appropriate for them. So I just wanted you to be aware. And I talk about this in a little bit more detail. I have a webinar, Transition to Adult Life webinar series that is posted in the online learning opportunities section of the CPAC website. And I'll talk a little bit about those webinars in a minute. I go through all of these resources a little bit more in depth. So the Connecticut Core Transition Skills, these are skills that the Connecticut State Department of Education feels that all students with disabilities would be better prepared to meet their goals if they practice and master to the greatest extent of their ability these core skills. So this is another place. Transition Bill of Rights, by the way, is available in English and Spanish, as is the Connecticut Core Transition Skills. So this is another place where parents, families, and students may get some ideas of things that they could be working on. So, so understanding their disability is something that, you know, for some students is a really important piece of self-advocacy. So perhaps looking at their IEP, looking at some of their documentation, if that's appropriate for them. Self-determination skills, so making choices, problem solving, goal setting. So this is another area when we're looking at doing things from home. What choices can our students make for themselves? So I often talk about students choosing their own food, like what, within reason, obviously, but what kind of cereal do they want? Or do they want eggs or cereal this morning? Or do they want a bagel? Allowing students to make those choices. Problem solving on their own. If they're bored, what kinds of things, asking them those questions. Well, what could you be doing right now? What things need to be done? But also if they get frustrated with something, not just jumping in, but maybe supporting them to solve it, but not always solving it for them, again, within reason. This can be a trying time, so we don't want to do things that are just going to make it more difficult for students. So self-advocacy, so all different kinds of skills and things that they could be working on. They could do some research about their rights and responsibility under disability legislation. So again, if you look at this and you just have no idea what what activities could support these skills, then give CPAC a call. We're happy to do some troubleshooting with you. We're happy to help you try to figure out what would be appropriate for your son or daughter.
Beth, can I just
Hi,
ask?
Lynn. Yeah, go for it.
Add something to this? So one of the things that that our students really rely on is the fact that they have a schedule. They know that every single day they are going to go in and they are going to do A, B, C, and D. And even if they are getting up in the morning and going to a job site, they know what job site they are going to. If they're in transition currently, or if they're in school, they know what day of the week it is, what their class schedule is like. So when Beth was talking about working on some of these core transition skills, a good way to kind of set that up for a student is to do it the night before and maybe set up a schedule for the next day. Even if they only pick 3 things that they want to focus on that following day, making a choice of what they want for breakfast, deciding some website they want to explore, a physical activity that they might do to be able to work on movement and getting some exercise. It's something that's very simple, but it gives them a place to start. And I think that it provides them with a little bit of somewhat of a schedule in this very unscheduled time that we're in.
Great.
Yeah, can I pipe? This is Laura. I'm going to pipe in a little bit.
Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely.
And I do like on the previous Zoom call, the choice boards and actually setting that up, to align with the goals on the IEP, whether it's going to be self-advocacy or connection for life skills.
I do have the choice boards as a slide.
Okay.
So there is a link to that so people can get that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything else? No, she just muted herself. Right?
Well, no, I was going to say, yeah, definitely. And we can probably go more into that later on in the slides.
Yeah. Yes. And you two jump in whenever. That's fantastic. Okay. So core transition skills. All right. So Building a Bridge is a booklet that is a little bit out of date, but it still has some good information in it. We have been working on an update of this, and it is at the State Department, I believe. It's just going through the vetting process, which takes a little bit of time. And given the current state of affairs, I would imagine it's going to take a little bit longer. So right now, I would suggest using the 2009 document, and let's take a look at that. This is also available in English and Spanish on our website. And I'm going to download. Okay. Oh, here we go. It's going slowly but surely. What technology is at this point. Okay, good, good. Oh, look at it. Fantastic. Okay, so, feel free to take a look at all of these pages, but I wanted to get to a couple of things that I know families have used. So we have these informal assessments in Building a Bridge in the form of pen and paper checklist type skills, checklist type assessments. And so these can be great learning opportunities and discussion points. I think I talked about this on one of the webinars that we did. So just taking this checklist, for example, and some students will be able to go through these on their own, and others can go through it with their family member, if not parents, maybe brother, sister, or whoever else is in your home. And some of these parents will need to go through for their students, but it can be a good conversation starter. So, oh, do you like taking care of other people? No, some students will say, no, absolutely not. Do you like working with people? Some students will say they absolutely have to work with people. They would be very unhappy being working in a job that they would be by themselves. And then other students, do not want to work with people. So little things like that are really important when it comes to transition planning. We talk about some of these, I don't see it on this one in particular, but some of these talk about, do you like to work outside? Do you like to work inside? Personal strengths, what are they good at? So many students with disabilities understand that they're not good at a lot of things, and we talk about deficits often, but what are they good at? So some of these more positive checklists. So there are many of them. And then the other, I'm sorry if scrolling through is making you dizzy. Another section that I want to point out is the self-advocacy pieces are still good. Understand that they're out of date. Like this website is out of date. So I actually have this link at the end of the presentation, the new link, I'm sorry. Students' rights and responsibilities, really important information. And then it's broken down into some different areas. So the IEP, the PPT team, assistive technology. Now, so this is a 2009 document, so I guarantee you this is significantly out of date because technology is has changed obviously quite a bit. But thinking about post-secondary education and training and employment. So if you're going on to college or some kind of post-secondary education or training and employment, then going through these pieces and just taking a look, what do I need to know? Am I ready for college? Lots of great questions here in this section. So I encourage you to use this document as a tool as it's appropriate for your son or daughter. And then the other document that's near and dear to my heart, because I helped with the update, is the Stepping Forward Self-Advocacy Guide. So similar to Building a Bridge, but this one is really geared toward middle and high school students. And again, lots of activities in here. So, journaling as an activity. This one is also this booklet is also in the process of being updated, and it's not yet available in Spanish, but it will be soon. There's those Connecticut core transition skills. So some of the websites, some of them are out of date, not all of them. So I'll post the new one as soon as it's available. But just, again, simple things that students can go through and write about their strengths. What do they do well? So really positive, strengths focused things that students can do, and activities. Lots of information about rights, some information about running their own PPT meetings. So that's a resource as well. And then I did talk about the CPAC Transition to Adult Life webinars. So we have 4 parts so far. Part 5, which was supposed to be today, will be rescheduled. We don't have a date on that yet, but they're all recorded. They're on YouTube. They are on our website. I believe that they are all on Facebook in our videos because we did them all as a Facebook Live. So, so they may be appropriate for students to go through, or they may not be, and they may be things that families want to go through. The nice thing is I know they're long because they're about an hour, but you can watch about 15 minutes and then pause it and then go back to it again. So if you don't have the time to stay with it for an hour, then know that they're there and they're available to you. So this is the webinar that Laura, Lynn, and I were on before this call. It was the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, and they did a webinar on resources around secondary transition and supporting kids at home. So I'm just going to click on a couple of the resources. I will post the link to their webinar as well, because as I didn't stay on for the whole thing because I popped off to get this call going, or to get this webinar going. But it seemed like they had lots of good resources and lots of good suggestions. So we will post that link as well, so that I don't want to just repeat what they were saying. So let's see if this will, their site has been inundated. So we also will post these resources with the link to the webinar. But just looking at the information on these, how many sheets is it? 7 sheets. They have all kinds of online exploring jobs, planning. There were some great, see if I can find them, the things that I am aware of. For getting ready for college courses, National Center for Work, National Center for Work with Work and Disability, I think it is. Sorry, so many acronyms. For youth, they have a really great course on disability disclosure. Think College is a resource. So depending on what you're looking to do with, or what your son or daughter is looking to do, what your student is looking to do, there's all kinds of resources. And then they broke them down into the different areas. So they have post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. So lots of, they just did a great job. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, because I think people there were not sleeping and they just stayed up and got all of this information together. But I believe, Laura and Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they went through some of these on the webinar so that people could see what they were all about.
They did. They did go through quite a few of them. I would really, if you can scroll up, Beth, I think that you have the link there to the one from the University of Indiana. And
yeah, that was a good one.
That was fantastic because it was interactive. And so you can actually select the age group. You can even get into disability specific information and what it is. Yep, you just passed it.
Where, tell me what it says.
It was University of Indiana. I wrote it down here. I'll try to see if I can find it quickly while you are looking. It was indiana.edu transition resources matrix. It was right before the off to college one. But you can select, oh, maybe it's not on there. You could actually select the disability, the age group, and the areas of the IEP that you wanted to focus on. And you had interactive events that you could go through with your child and really zone in and zero in on what it was that you wanted to focus on. So if we can find that one, I would really like for us to be able to share that as well.
Okay. I'm not seeing it.
No, I thought I saw it was Ohio State. I saw state, so that was what made me stop.
So we will highlight that that one as well. And we'll post this in, every place that we can. That sounds like it. That sounds really great. So I think it was Laura who mentioned either Week at a Glance or the choice boards. And so I just wanted to show those two resources. So this could be used as a planning tool for families and or students. So just, going through what, what are we looking at in the IEP? Are we looking at these three areas that special education looks at: post-secondary education, employment, and independent living? And then what activities are we going to use? And I love when things like this, they already have ideas filled in, because, just some exercise is just some exercise. I say it like it's just so easy. Exercise is part of this. Doing laundry is part of this. Talking about, something online that is a current event. There are classes on current events in high school. So that is something that might be a possibility. Emailing grandma. There's a lot of things on here that we don't realize that are skills that are necessary. They're life skills. So again, it's not always that pen and paper or online learning, though that, like I said before, is a part of it.
Beth, could you just go back to that real quick for a
Sure.
second? I just wanted to add something. So if you look across the top, they are focusing on those 4 IEP goals. So what were the areas that they wanted that were in the IEP, and then breaking them down. And you will see, if you scroll down, they were not looking to cover every single goal every single day. And I think as parents at home trying to manage this situation, we really need to make sure that we remember we don't have to manage every minute of every day. And it's okay to have some downtime, and it's okay to be able to take something like cleaning and organizing the garage as something that they are working on for their home life skill. That's something for independent living, being able to keep your space clean. So how are they going to measure that? By checking in with dad before and after. So being able to translate some of our everyday activities into areas that are actually goals and objectives can make this a little less stressful.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. That's great. Awesome. And then this is the choice board. And the thing that really jumped out to me when I looked at this document was all of the links, all of the opportunities and suggestions. And, we're looking at job interviewing as something to practice around employment. So here we have some information for that. And I'm assuming that so they broke down the post-secondary education piece and the independent living piece.
This is Laura. Just really quickly, another thing to think about: while they may not be going to school right now and going to that job shadowing or training, you can actually do that at home and maybe do an interview with one of your friends who has a job, and talk about what some of the skills that are needed for that job, and doing things like that, just to do a career exploration, and in a not typical traditional way, but still being able to access that at home.
Yeah, great. And so I don't know whether on the NTACT webinar, if they went through this document a little bit more. I was not on when they did that. But just, looking, sort of thinking outside of the box, and, what are the things that we are doing or can do? And then, what are the areas that we need some help with ideas and suggestions? Okay, so a couple of things that students can do. I put a notice out to students yesterday on the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board Facebook page, and I have a slide that will we'll tell you how to find that in a minute. The Bureau of Special Education has asked us to reach out to the Connecticut Youth Advisory Board and youth in general, young adults, students, to share input and thoughts around distance and remote learning for transition age students. As I said at the beginning, they are working on guidance. It's not going to be out all that quickly around secondary transition. I don't think we're going to have any big answers anytime soon, though we are continuously asking the questions. But in the meantime, what do students think about what's happening? What do they think about distance and remote learning? What ideas do they have? I spoke with Michael Scanlon, who does a lot of the Youth Advisory Board work for CPAC, and he talked about communication, how important it was for teachers to be communicating with families and with students. And he also talked about just, those sort of out of the box skills, and that it's not appropriate for every student to have Google Classrooms, or not to have, but to access Google Classrooms. It's not going, the information as they put out on Google Classrooms might not be appropriate for every student. So what are the other things that they can do? If there are certain things a student is working on, perhaps that teacher could create a video demo so that parents would understand how to work with a student. So those were things that he was suggesting. Are there pros and cons in their opinion, in students' opinions on this type of learning? And then are there any resources that students really love? We know that there's a lot on YouTube that students access, and so I'd love for students to share information with us. So at the bottom, you can see if there is anybody online that has, a student online that has information and ideas now, you could put it in the Q&A or chat, or you could email me. You could email CPAC. You could go on Facebook and put that information on our Facebook page. And then families, we have a request also from the Bureau of Special Education to give us information. What are your concerns around secondary transition? I shared those two questions at the beginning around, what happens with my student who is 21 and was aging out at the end of this school year, and what happens with my student who has work in the community as part of their IEP goals. And again, we don't have answers to those questions right now, but those are two of the questions that we are asking the Bureau to address in guidance. And so if you have questions and concerns, again, please put the information in the Q&A section, or email CPAC, email me, go on our Facebook page. We want to know what your questions are. We want to be able to get that information to the state. We want to have our concerns addressed by the State Department. And so just a reminder, our consultants are available to take calls or respond to emails. You can contact us through email at cpac@cpacinc.org, or you can call us at 860-739-3089. All of our consultants are working from home, but we have the capacity to continue to work with families. And we do have a call at 1 o'clock today, a Zoom call for Spanish-speaking families and support providers. So if you're interested in that, I don't have the link on here, but if you would like that information, drop a note in the Q&A or chat, and I can get that link to you. So it's literally 15 minutes from now, as soon as we hang up from this webinar, that will begin. Where else to find information? Always our website at www.cpacinc.org. We do have a Facebook page. The link is right there. So facebook.com/CPAC/ You do not need to be a Facebook user to access our general CPAC Facebook page. So just so people are aware of that. And then if you follow us on social media, you do need to be a Facebook user to access the groups. So we have 4 that may be of interest to people on this webinar. One is CPAC Resources and Support, so you can request to join that group. That is for general information, so it's not specific to transition. It will contain all kinds, I've seen all kinds of things about the federal guidance that's been coming out, resources for families, all kinds of things have been on that page. We have CPAC and Espanol as a group as well. So same as CPAC Resources and Supports, but with information in Spanish. We have a new group that I don't think Laura and Lynn even know about because it was created about 3 minutes before the webinar started. It's called the Secondary Transition Resources and Support Group. So we will be sharing information on our general Facebook page, but all of this information from NTACT will upload that document because we can't upload the documents easily on our general Facebook page. So we'll add the links to our general Facebook page, but we'll actually upload the document to this Secondary Transition Resources and Support group. So you can request to join that. And then also the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board. So information for students, youth, young adults, but families are welcome to hop onto that and see what opportunities are available there. This is our how to connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest. There's a board on Pinterest titled COVID-19 and Special Education Information and Resources, and then Twitter as well. If you have ideas or suggestions on other ways that you get information, and we haven't covered it here between websites and social media, please let us know. Let us know what you need, because we are here to serve families with information and resources. And then these are just some websites. So of course, our website, the Transition to Adult Life section, the NTACT website, which is the webinar that we were talking, the group that did the webinar we were talking about. Transition Coalition is another transition website that has a lot of good information, as well as Pacer Center. The State Department of Education Bureau of Special Education. This is the link to the new secondary transition section. And then last but not least, the Connecticut Transition, cttransition.org, which is Connecticut's transition website. So Laura, Lynn, is there anything else that you would like to share?
Someone commented that their child doesn't understand why school is closed. And I think that is really a fear that a lot of students are experiencing, not just those who are in high school. You've got elementary school students and middle school students, and even some parents that are also very afraid and very nervous. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Beth, that we posted on our group a link to a discussion board on talking with your child about why school was closed and why people needed to stay home. Was that on there? Do you remember? I think like early in the week we talked about this. So we can get that exact information for you and send it to you. But I would really recommend trying to check out that space on our page. But we'll make a note of that.
Yes, absolutely. We did post something. I just don't remember exactly when it was. But,
yeah, unfortunately, we had so much stuff coming at us, you know, very early on, and so much changed. But that is a very good point that we'll make sure that we highlight that so that other parents can also access it. And I think that obviously we need to modify according to what your child is going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was earlier last week, like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, it was very early on in the process.
Right.
Okay, yeah, great. So we will get that information out. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yes. Yeah. So I said this earlier in the call, but I just want to say it again. Please reach out to us. If you don't know how to modify these things for your son or daughter, you know, the IEP, the I stands for individualized. And so we really need to look at each student as an individual and really, you know, talk about what is appropriate for them, what can they do, what kinds of things might be supportive to the IEP. We're here, you know, we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Anything else? Okay, so I am just looking. To make sure that we don't have any questions that are hanging on. But Laura and Lynn, if there's nothing else that you have to add, then that's all I have for today. As we learn more information, we are going to be doing more of these webinars to get information out to families. So if you don't already receive the, I should have put this in here. I didn't even think of it. If you don't already receive the CPAC e-news, then drop us an email at cpac@cpacinc.org to be added to the mailing list. All right, so that being said, that is all for today. Thank you all for coming onto the call today, and I hope everybody is staying healthy and you know, finds that time for a little bit of self-care, whatever that means to you. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.